Good evening, English teachers in Peru and teachers around the world. Welcome to today's webinar. This is our spring webinar series, Innovation and Didactic Strategies in English Language Teaching. And the title of this session is Developing Reading Skills. So let's go. We're going to start with this session. And before that, I'm going to invite you to our network. We have you can follow us on our Facebook, our WhatsApp. We have a Telegram too. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can follow us on TikTok too. Remember that teachers, you are very welcome on our network. Our community is very, very big, but we have some instructions for today's session that you have to follow in order to participate in today's session. Please remember this. Type your questions in the comment section. The answer to your questions and comments will be replied by our guest speaker at the end of the webinar in the question time section. And the most important instructions about the exit ticket. Remember that you have to complete the exit ticket in order to register your attendance for today's session, yeah? When finishing the webinar, we will share a link for you to have access to the exit ticket, which will be available for 15 minutes. Remember that, please, teachers, and pay attention to today's session too, because you have to answer some questions in the exit ticket, so easy questions. Now it's time to know our guest speaker, and we have with us our dear administrator, Angela Salazar. Could you introduce our guest speaker, please, Angelita?
Of course, Marie. Good evening to all of you. It is a pleasure to have all of you here tonight. And it is also my pleasure to introduce MG Karen Meza Fernandez, who has been an English teacher in public, private schools, and universities. She has been working as an English language teacher trainer at the Escuela de Educación Superior Pedagógica Monterrico. Karen has been the academic director of Colegio Mayor Presidente del Perú. She is currently working in the English department at the Dirección de Educación Secundaria of the Ministry of Education. During the year 2020, she led the creation and elaboration of the pedagogical materials for the English area of Aprendo en Casa strategy. Likewise, in 2021, she led the creation and elaboration of television programs for the English area, and she's one of the developers of the pedagogical materials for the web platform of Aprendo en Casa 2021 and 22. Finally, she is a student at the Harvard, Harvard Graduate School of Education. And Karen, good evening. It is a pleasure for us to have you here tonight. The audience is all yours.
Thank you, Angela. It is indeed a pleasure for me and truly honored to be here. Thank you, English Teachers in Peru, for the invitation. Well, I'm here to try to help you understand and probably refresh what you already know about developing reading skills. One of the skills that, let's say, it's very important, we all know, but at the same time, we all know that it's a skill most students and even adults struggle with developing. So I'm going to share my screen. See. I hope I am sharing. Am I sharing right now? Am I sharing?
Yes, Karen, we can see your screen.
Right. So I'll start now with this. Okie dokie. So, developing reading skills by me. First of all, I'm really glad many of you are there. Thank you. I see that there are over 400 people listening and watching this, so thank you very much for your time. And so I would like to start this conversation by giving you some research findings. There was, we all talk about reading, but what does really happen in the classroom? There was a study in 8 schools. This is in the United States, but still the reality is quite similar to ours, but not the same, because they chose 8 schools that could be considered as vulnerable schools, in vulnerable communities where even lunch is provided by the school to these kids, because otherwise they would not, have proper food. So let's say that these are kids that are usually not rating well when they are assessed in different areas. So they enter and they studied, they had a qualitative and quantitative study on what was happening in the classroom regarding the reading instruction. And this is what they found. And I want you to please analyze if this is applicable or not to our context, especially to your context in your classroom with your students. When they analyzed, they saw that there were activities that based on whole group instruction and small group instruction. And the effective schools were those who focused their attention on small group interaction. In other words, it's that when they read, they do it with small groups, and they tend to have activities where students can interact with each other when they read, or teacher pays attention to those small groups and goes coaching around, rather than having the whole class reading sometimes the same thing or having, general questions for everybody. So effective schools in reading were those that work more in a small group interaction. So the question is, what do you think? Does that happen to you in your class? Do you think that could be applicable to our context? The other finding was about word level activities versus comprehension level activities. When we say word level activities, we're talking about how they pronounce it. They talk more about phonics, recognizing the words and everything. If we translate or transfer that to English language learning, we're talking about probably sentence level and also word level pronunciation, because it's a different language. And so we need to make the relationship between how the word is written and how it is pronounced and the meaning of those words. So if the activities were based on trying to understand the pronunciation and the meaning of the words in the text, then you're doing word level instruction or activity. At comprehension level, it's very different. It's when you make questions not only to understand the meaning of the words or a sentence, but higher level questions, asking more about how things evolve in the story, for example. You make questions about the writer, what the intention of the writer was, what do you think will happen next, and probably create something based on what you read. That's what we will see a little bit later. We will see how we can work on comprehension level questions. So the finding is that effective teachers are those who work more on comprehension level activities. So students reading improved or shows much better improvement when the activities that the teachers provide are those that work more on comprehension level rather than working at word level. We're not saying that they stop doing that, it's that they focus more on comprehension level activities. Another finding is the style of the teacher. And here we're talking about if when doing reading activities, the teacher is more like telling what they are reading, so telling teacher style, or is it a coaching teacher style? A coaching teacher style is more like a teacher is going around while the students are reading. It's not the teacher telling them exactly what to read, every sentence, okay, next paragraph, now read the next. No, it's students reading, concentrated on the text, manipulating it, and teacher going around coaching, seeing where they may find difficulties or to see if they are doing the right thing. So if that is done, that's where they saw more effectiveness in developing the reading skills. The final finding is about involvement. Was it students' active involvement or was it passive? When we say that it is passive involvement, we're talking about turn taking during oral reading. In other words, when you ask your students to read a line or a paragraph and they take turns and then the other reads the next one and so on, that's called passive involvement because you're telling them what to read, when to read, and how to read it even. Or oral turn taking or listening to the teacher. The teacher is reading. The teacher reads and students listen. So that's passive. And when we talk about active involvement, we're talking about when the student again is himself or herself with the text focused on reading at his own pace. Also, active involvement means that he's writing or doing something based on what he's reading. And of course, the most effective type of involvement is the one where students are active. So what do you think? That's my question. What do you think? Do you think this happens or could happen in your class? This is what research is telling us. And maybe some of you who are more curious might be interested in making some research yourselves. What's happening in your class? Now, we'll move on to a little bit of reflection, because when we talk about reading, we're talking about a skill, as I said when I started, that everybody knows is important, but we know is the skill that in the world is probably where is the lowest. You know? Even in PISA exams or whenever we talk about reading in our context in Peru, we say we don't read. So the question that I will ask to you is, after you've read the comic strip, can you please read the comic strip? I'm going to mute. So those who read the comic strip, what do you think is trying to tell us in regard with reading, adults and children? What does it make you think of? I will see your comments if you want to participate. I hope I can see them. I'm connected. So, what do you think is happening, and what do you think it makes you? What makes you think? What is the relationship between reading, children, and adults? I've got a friend, and this has to do with the comic strip. I've got a friend whose two children, and they are lovely children. One is 11 or 12, and the other is 8. They die for reading. They always want to have books. The best gift they can get are books. And you know why that happens? Because my friend, Olgita, she's always reading at home. Whenever she has the time, she doesn't turn on the TV, but she looks for a nice spot at home and she starts reading. And that sometimes can be the case. Why don't students or don't children read? Probably the adults around them don't read either. Why do my students read? Is it probably because teachers around them don't read either? Do you enjoy reading or not? Do you usually read or not? Why do you read? I'm going to ask the person who is helping me in here from English Teachers in Peru to please share the link of the form. There is a form. I'm asking you the following. Why do you read? If you cannot open the form, you can always give your answer in the chat. So, why do you read? Is it that you read for pleasure, for entertainment, for religious purposes, for learning, because you have to do it, maybe because it's academic, you're studying right now and they give you something and you have to read, otherwise you will fail. You do it because you want to be far away from the real world and enter a different one. Why do you read? Have we shared the link? I don't know if somebody can help me with that. Okay, I don't think somebody can help
Yeah,
me.
yes, Karen, we share the link.
Okay, great.
on
I'm
the
trying
chat.
to see the comments. I don't know if there are any comments, but well, I don't see any in my phone. So it must be because there aren't any. All right, so I will see if there are some answers. I'm going to now go to the answers here. Where is it here? And let's see, responses. Oh yes, 91 people have already answered. So and these are the answers. Look, wow. Here we have that most of you like reading for learning. That's the green that is changing every time you are answering. For learning, it means for gaining new knowledge. In other words, we're curious about the word and we want to read to see what's happening, no? Or in whatever area. So that's good. And second, we have for studying, because you have to do it. Okay. Third, we have for entertainment. It says that you just like the reading, no? You like knowing what's happening, the drama. And we have 11 people, or the fourth is for relaxing, just to be in a quiet spot, reading far away from everybody. And some, very few, for escaping reality. So thank you very much for answering. And it keeps increasing. We have more and more people for learning. So my question would be is, if we tend to ask our students this question too, are we asking them, do we know why they read? We have some answers that were also provided by another group of people. In your case, the majority reads for learning, or that's what you're saying. In another group, look, it seems to be there's a coincidence. It was another group of teachers. They also had, as the highest number of people, they read for learning too. And then the second one was for escaping reality. For you was the last one. That's a different group because we are all different. And we have the smallest one is for spiritual joy. These people, I didn't put that option, so but anyway. So every group is different. So your classrooms are different from what you probably have answered right now. And every class you have may be different. And also the photo you take in one moment may be different when they are, at the beginning of the year, when they are in the middle of the year, or at the end of the year. So it helps you to know why is it that they read. So we have said already three important things. Research, so data that is telling us what could be effective. We have seen that adults, the context, in other words, around students, help students encourage reading. And we all have a reason why we read. And as teachers of English, of a language, we should try to investigate a bit more why our students like reading or not. Now, I'm going to do a reading exercise with you. This is going to be quick. I want you to pay attention and let's start. You will see something and you will read something. You will read something and I want you to write it in the chat box very quickly. I'm not able to see the answers, which is a pity. I don't know what's happening. Maybe it's me who don't know how to do that. Maybe because it's my mobile phone. Well, anyway, so I want you to read the following. It will be quick. Okay. How many of you can see or can write what you read? I'm not going to repeat it. Let's see. How many of you can remember? Let's see, top chat. If you remember, I know it was quick, don't worry. I know I did it on purpose. If you were able to read quickly and you are writing it in the chat, maybe you have written, I like, or I like walking, or maybe I like walking on the beach, right? This is a picture of me walking on the beach. And what I actually showed was I like walking on the beach. And I did that on purpose. When we read, first, you are all teachers of English, so I knew some of you were very quick reading. I know that you know these words. And what I want to prove with this is that when you read and you have all the background knowledge, what you do is you predict what comes next. Some of you probably only saw like walk, but you said, oh, I like walking because after like is ing. And you know that it's on the beach. So immediately you knew that that was what I was trying to say. You probably didn't stop to think why, or because it was too quick. There were twice that. When we decode a message, we do it very quickly and we predict in chunks. When we read, we also read in chunks. It's not that we always read only word by word. We also read in chunks. More or less the same when we talk about the speaking component, we also say that we learn chunks. Same thing happens in reading. When we approach a text, we approach a text as a whole, not as little parts only. So I'm going to tell you another story. I want you to read this, though this time it won't be that fast. I want you, no, it's not a story, but it's a text. I want you to read it. Read this. Okay, those who were reading, how many of you thought first that elephants and lions was weird that he was selling that, no? Selling, or that in the markets there were elephants and lions. And you said, what? And you were surprised by that. How many of you thought after reading the first sentence, those animals figures, they said, ah, now, yes, they are talking about figures, no? Little gadgets of the animal. How many of you thought that Chris was going to the market to buy and not to sell? He's the owner of the business. How many of you thought that Chris was a woman? In fact, he's a man here, right? That happens because when we read again, we bring with us our prior knowledge. We bring expectations of when we understand something, we want to connect with what is coming next. So we predict and we make assumptions about what's going to come next. This process of reading is important to understand because sometimes we just focus on one word or one sentence when we make students read. When we read, we want, again, to read as a chunk, and we want to understand the whole message. It's natural. We want to know what's coming next. We want to predict. We want to connect it with our lives or not. We always connect it because we know the market in a market, there are things to sell, and so, etc. We know that elephants and lions are not in a market, but still you connect it with it, etc., etc. So reading as a chunk, in chunks, is probably what we should be doing in class rather than working on words. As the research at the beginning said, more effective techniques are those that focus on comprehension rather than word level understanding. So what is reading? So we've been talking about reading a lot. There are two definitions I've taken. There are many, but all of them will probably at the end talk about the same thing. The first one is by Pisa. They say that reading literacy is understanding, using, reflecting on, and engaging with written texts in order to achieve one's goals, develop one's knowledge and potential, and participate in society. That's why probably your interest in society is always to be in learning mode, you as teachers. And that's why when I ask you why you read, you said, okay, learning. Different people, different purposes. But what we have here is that relationship between the person and the text makes you be more participative in a society, according to PISA. Now we have Goodman. Reading is a selective process. It involves partial use of available minimal language cues selected from perceptual input on the basis of the reader's expectation. And as this partial information is processed, tentative decisions are made to be confirmed, rejected, or refined as reading progresses. This definition is more or less what we did with the previous exercise with you. When we read, we're predicting, we're connecting with ourselves. We have a perception, we have expectation, and when we read, we confirm that, or we deny that, or we refine it. So reading is a process that is active per se. But if you only make me read one sentence all the time, or concentrate on one word, I may not be interested in reading anymore. So, widow song, this is more in our field, ELT, those who know about widow song, from long ago. He says that it's a mental process. Oh, well, we all know that it's a mental process. It happens here. That has immediate information, it brings immediate information to you, but we should not only have the information with us. We should discriminate is the discrimination of that information into meaning. So in other words, okay, it gives us immediate information, but we need to give a meaning to it. When we say we need to give a meaning to it, who gives meaning? A person. So now we need to talk about the reader. The reader creates that meaning, and those meanings should be negotiated. Read and try to understand this concept. The reader creates meaning. Remember, we're always creating, we're predicting, connecting, it's confirming, blah, 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 blah. And those meanings should be negotiated. When you negotiate something, it's like an exchange. So where is the exchange? If it's only the reader, very good. Some of you probably have already said the writer. Yes. When we are reading, we're interacting with a writer. So there is this negotiation between the reader and the writer. But how do you negotiate with the writer? Because there is a text. So there is when the importance of the text is crucial for developing reading skills. So what text are we reading? Are we interested in reading it? What type of text? How was that text constructed? So in the process of reading, now we will move on to the text. This is a text, isn't it? Well, this is what we commonly know as text. We probably, at my generation, has probably read text like this quite a lot when being at school. But reading today is different. Different in form maybe, but still it's different because it's non-linear. In here, it was linear. You start from here, finish here, then, next line, next line, next line. Here, sorry, reading today is not like that. If we see, I try to put some pictures there. First, you know, we use gadgets that in the past we didn't have, so we don't really have printed paper for reading. But we have pictures inserted. We have pop-ups when we read online. We have small letters that we can make big in our mobile phones, where while we're reading something, probably we are also at the same time seeing a pop-up of a WhatsApp message coming in, which we quickly read. When we go to our social media, it's non-linear. We have like a picture, we have a post, but we have a column there with what's coming, some more pop-ups, people that write some message. So we have different, the reading is all over and it happens. It's quite active also. Also, the new technology has allowed for us to watch, listen, and read. So like this is a video I was watching. We have the lyrics that we're reading. At the same time, we're listening to it, and I may have pop-ups at the same time. So it's not linear anymore, and skills can be intertwined. So it's not just me and a text. Now we have to see that reading involves probably the mobilization of other skills. So, in your experience, what challenges have you found when teaching reading? What have you found as challenges? What are those difficult things that my students find when reading? What is it that I find difficult when thinking of reading activities? What are those challenges? These are some of the answers a group of teachers gave when they were asked the very same question. I really wanted to read your answers. I'm sorry I cannot. Again, it's me probably. Thank you if you are answering, because that's going to help you also reflect. If you are doing that, good for you. So what challenges may teachers have when teaching reading? This group of teachers found these challenges, and I put it on purpose, like the majority found that the most challenging thing is teaching vocabulary. Then the second one is lack of reading strategy. For them, that was a challenge. The third one is lack of motivation or interest in reading. The fourth one was lack of content knowledge. So what it means is that students may not be familiarized with the topic, with what is the topic of the theme of what they are reading. Then we have fifth one is lack of grammar. And the last one is lack of time. That's why they struggle when they teach reading. So what's yours? What is it that you find more challenging? Sometimes our worries are connected to what we think reading is. Remember I told you at the beginning that the most effective reading works on comprehension activities rather than word level activities? Well, it seems to be that because we are more worried about word level activities, we might be more worried about vocabulary. Might. I'm not saying that always happens. But we also have to recognize that teaching vocabulary is important. Otherwise, how can they understand what they are reading? So it's a matter of making a balance of what we do in class when trying to teach reading. So how can we face these challenges? Remember I told you about the text, how the text is important, so that we create this interest in reading, so that there is this negotiation of meaning when the reader starts reading. Three things that you should bear in mind when doing this activity. First, that the topics and the themes should respond to your students' interest. That's basic, and you know it. But how many times do we really find texts that respond to those interests? Or are we just using texts that I have at hand? And I understand, of course, it's hard to create text, or it's hard to find those texts. But the first thing we should do is to ask the students what they're interested in. So knowing that, we can probably do it quicker. Another thing is that that text should try to evoke a connection with the student's fund of knowledge. In other words, with his personal story. Try to make a connection with that. If we're talking about, okay, you say, yeah, oh yeah, we're talking about clothing, no? We're talking about fashion in teenagers. So I find a beautiful text on fashion and teenagers. But how do that connect with my students? Does it connect with my students? How can I make that connection? So try to look for those fans of knowledge of your students. When we talk about fans of knowledge, we're talking about those cultural ideas that our students have. I'm sorry about my dog. He's going to come from time to time. And by doing that, we are making a connection that is irreplaceable and that makes learning really meaningful for students. When we talk about food, for example, something easy, simple, it's not that we will only talk about grapes and apples and pears, but we may be talking about, if we're, for example, in the rainforest, we're talking about the fruits that like awaje, for example, no, and many other fruits that they are more familiar with. Yeah, but how do you say that in English? Okay, no, you don't say it, but you're connecting it, and from there you are describing where does it grow, what color is it, how often do you eat it? So you're constructing the language based on the student's fund of knowledge. So whatever they read, try to make that connection in the text. No? Also, in the text, try to add some mystery, something that will, make students go back to the text to find out, or try to understand. So make it a reason for reading. Pose questions even in the text, something that will make them go deeper into the topic. So those are 3 ways of facing the challenges you may find. Here I have some texts that you can work with, or type of text that usually you can work with. One is from Aprende en Casa in Peru, where when we talk about love, we created this text in the Ministry of Education for students to do an activity in 2020. And we were very interested more in the topic rather than the words per se. No, probably the level was a bit high, but the activities that we work with the students were according to the level they were in. And that's, I understand that's a fear for some teachers, no? But this text is very high, yes. And you're true to be worried about that. So let's grade it. And even when graded, you may feel that this is still difficult for students. But what is more important is that the activities that you create for students will focus more on the understanding of the whole, depending on the level, and on those specific things that you think will make them understand the idea of the text, rather than word by word, and that will make it much more complex. I also chose this picture. This is for National Geographic. No? They have beautiful materials, so enter the page. Always cite, please. Copyright is important whenever you create text or you adapt them. Say where you took it from or where you adapted it from. Students' interest should be there. So even reading these 2 sentences in English will make our students be interested in reading in English. The workup, Peru, we are all fans of the workup. So, and usually the recent news come in English. And so if we make them read that seems to be just 1 sentence, is a lot sometimes for our students, but it brings a whole message with it. So when grading text here, we have some pieces of advice. Avoid jargon. If you're creating or grading the text, take out all the jargon, use simpler words. depending on the student's level. Make it friendly in terms of complexity of the topic. If the topic is too complex, make it, simpler to understand. Still talking about violence, but in the way of a story, for example. No? Grammar, this is something I usually find in a concern in teachers. No? Okay, I'm going to grade the text. So if I am teaching, because still we have in our mind that basic level can only do present simple. So all your text goes to present simple. And if it's third person, all my text is third person. Avoid doing that because real texts are not like that. Have some chunks. Remember, when we read chunks. So try to have a variety of tenses, of course, graded, but at least 3 to 4 different tenses. It doesn't mean that we're all going to have, a complex text, but do not only do it with one tense because that's not real reading. Not everything can be present simple. Not everything can be in past simple. No, there should be something that makes it more natural, more real. The length, okay, shorten the length, depending, or maybe make it longer for students who are at higher level. Add pictures, add graphs, because that's what reading is like. Now, as you can see, look about the penguin. It has a small paragraph, it has like a chart with specific information, and that's all. Keep the purpose for which the text was created. If the text was created for entertaining, try to make students understand so that they get entertained. If it's a text created for providing information, then keep that purpose. The text was for that, so students should understand the information because they need to maybe find a job, no? So then they match the best job for the best person. So you keep the purpose rather than only analyzing at word level. Some of you may be concerned about how aligned is my graded text to the CFR, the Common European Framework of Reference, and I have found this toolkit useful. Some of you may know it. This is from Pearson. I don't work for Pearson, but I think this is a useful tool. Have you used it or not? If you go to the web page, I have even done a research based on this, and it's helpful. I'm going to show you quickly. I hope I can do that. Yes, it's here. Look, this is, if you go to this text that says text analyzer, and you will see this space. Look, I have here a text that I'm going to do it very quickly, just for the purpose of showing you how this works. I will copy and paste here, and I will put email to a friend, just as a title, and I will just analyze my text. So this tool that is free online will analyze the text that you have created or that you have graded, and will tell you what level it is. Look, how many words, what level of the CFR it is, what's the sentence count, the word count, what words can be more difficult probably for students to understand, and then you can download that report. So there are ways to know how your graded is going and if it's aligned to the CFR. So try to use it. Now, when having reading skills analysis, we have all of these skills. Some may say sub-skills, but skills. Scanning, skimming, inferring, predicting. I will quickly go through each of them. I don't know if I have the time. I will be very quickly because there's something else I need to show you. Scanning is just, go through the text very quickly in order to find something. Find how many times is the word love in the text. Okay, you're not really reading, you're just getting familiarized with the text, but at the same time, you're trying to find a word. So that's okay. Skimming is more like the general idea. Go through the text. Okay, is it a story or is it or is it news? Okay, do quickly. It's a story. So it makes you be more familiarized with the text. Inferring. So it's who is Maria? Who is Maria? Maria is in the text, but who is Maria? Oh, she's the mother or she's the nurse. I don't know. Predicting what's going to happen next. recognizing links, no? See, especially cause and effect, no? This happened with this because of that, no? Or this part of the story is linked to this part of the story. Recognizing links, and identifying the target audience. Who was it written for? Was it written for children? Was it written for people who don't have a job? Was it written for people who like cooking, etc.? Guessing meaning from context, that's something I think it describes by itself. Identifying main message. What's the main message of the text? Establishing context for reading. I'm going to show you how this will work through an exercise. What do you think? This is what a teacher may say to the students after reading a text. And in the text, for example, appears the phrase hands-on. So the teacher says to the student, what do you think the expression hands-on means? What helped you to guess? If we're doing that type of exercise with our students, what are we doing? Are we establishing context for reading? Are we guessing meaning from context? Or are we predicting? A, B, or C? Good for you if you chose B, guessing meaning from context. Okay, that was easy. Next one. What do you think will happen next? The teacher asked the students after reading a passage in English. What is the skill the teacher is trying to work on? Scanning, identifying target audience, or predicting? Good for you if you did predicting. Now the teacher says, the following text is about shopping online. Don't read it yet. Instead, talk with your partner about what you know about shopping online. So talk to your partner about shopping online. What is the teacher trying to develop in students? Inferring, recognizing links, or establishing context for reading? Yes, establishing context for reading. Another idea, not idea, but I think this is crucial. I think whenever we have our students in front of us and we want them to read, we should work on pre-reading activities. These pre-reading activities are the cornerstone of engaging students for reading. And in what can we do? When we use pictures, because usually text will bring pictures, at least in low levels, probably little by little, no many pictures will appear in there, but in real life, there are lots of pictures when we read, unless they are academic papers, of course. No? Use pictures for creating expectation, engaging, vocabulary knowledge, funds of knowledge. No? Funds, remember, is cultural, all the cultural background of the student. So by making questions like, what do you see before they read? Or as you see here, this is a pre-reading activity. What's happening from the picture? Look at the picture, still looking at the picture. What happened? What will happen? Predicting. What do you want to know by looking at the picture? They haven't read yet. You can also add text clues or titles or headings that are, only 2 words or maybe a phrase that will engage students and also make the same questions. Or you can ask them, for example, to skim the text before reading in detail. And then you can just say, is it a sad or happy story? Go through the text. So they are not doing really detailed reading, but they are going through the text. It's sad, miss, it's sad. Or it's happy, but they are getting familiar. So it's pre-reading activities that will help us engage students to go through a proper reading afterwards. Also, it's advisable to practice comprehension strategies. Again, I'm going back to the research I talked about at the beginning. Comprehension, okay, this is what we want to work with students if we really want to develop the reading skill per se. Identifying gist and purpose. What's the text about? What title can be good for it? Why did the writer write this? We can also have options for this. It depends on the level. You will, I'm sure you will be more imaginative than me, but what we want them is to identify the purpose of the text. Identifying the main idea. For example, how can you describe what happens in a sentence or in your own words? You can ask the students, or you can have pictures. Which of the pictures describes the main idea of the text. You see, or you have the options. Identifying key details. When did this happen? Where did she go? Those are the type of questions we're more familiarized with. When we work with text, we're usually working more on identifying key details, and we sometimes forget about the gist, the purpose, and the main idea. And very quickly, it's also advisable to work on the sequence of events. Most texts have a sequence, an order, so it helps students recognize the sequence of the text. No? If it's a story, it's easier, but sometimes it's not a story, but still there is an order. What idea comes first or second, or is connected, or is a consequence, like in the next one, identifying cause and effect. No? In a text, a question like, why was she angry? No? And then they go to the text and see. Identifying collocations, no? That's for vocabulary or chunks again, chunks, try to work on that. And guessing meaning. And here comes the use of dictionary. It is also advisable from research that dictionaries should be used, yes, but not crazily. In other words, not like for every single word, I don't know. Try to always encourage students to guess what they understand from the context of the text per se, and then go back and check. No? And we can always work higher order thinking skills when we make students read, because those are the type of activities that will really develop reading skills in our students, as we said also at the beginning of the research. So when we are working on basic comprehension at the bottom, at the beginning of this level of multi-level thinking skills, they are trying to remember or trying to understand. So it's when we make questions like for the main ideas or details, cause and effect, they are yes comprehension questions, but they are still basic. If we wanted to be more critical, we will be asking them to analyze and apply, probably using if clauses, when, no, etc., so that they make inferences or judgments or predictions. So that's why this, in that respect, then language chunks are going to be helpful. Or when we develop creative thinking in students, we are making connections with themselves so that they can create something from what they read. No, a creative or writing task, a different ending of the story, for example, is a creative task. Making an interview to the writer about the topic, for example, it's a creative task. Or a personal response, something that is more connected to his or her life. So I think this is basically it, and I would like to finish by saying that please, please, please don't forget that without input, there's no output. Sometimes we want our students to write, we want them to speak, but take it for sure that that may not happen if we do not provide them with lots of input, and reading is probably the best way of doing that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, dear Karen, for this amazing presentation. And now it's time to answer some questions for
Okay.
you.
You will have to read them to me because I don't know what happened with my mobile phone. I cannot read anything.
Okay. Also, yeah. I have some questions here, a lot of questions, yeah, but we are going to answer some.
That's good.
Sorry, Karin. Okay, yeah. And the first questions from Miguel Pino. What is inferring in the reading strategy?
Okay, thank you for the question. When you infer, you're trying to guess in a way, but from evidence. No? So you read something, and from that, what you're reading, you are trying to say, so this is, for example, if you have Maria lives in a town. She has 2 children. My inference is that she's married. Can be right, can be wrong, but I will have to continue reading in order to know. And why am I saying that she's married? Because she has 2 children, for example. No, but I will have to continue reading. So that's inference.
Okay, great. And this is a capacity, yeah, that we have in the capacities of the competence in the curriculum for the English era, yeah?
Yes.
And another questions from David Talavera. After 2 years of pandemic, students are now in a low level. Is it recommended authentic or adapted texts?
Very good question. What was the name?
David Talavera.
David. Okay. David,
Yeah.
that's an excellent question. I encourage you to read about authentic, and I think you know already, but when we talk about authentic reading, there are different definitions. And the one I am more in agreement with is the one that says that we can use the very same, a real text that we adapt or grade, but that does not lose its purpose, why it was written. So there is a definition. I'm sorry about that names. I cannot tell you who said that, but there is a definition on authentic text, authentic material when we talk about that. And some others make the differentiation with adaptation. And so when we adapt is, okay, now I will change even the purpose of it. So you're adapting it to what you want, to your goals, whatever goal you have as a teacher. Sometimes that goal is more structural or lexis-based, whereas authentic keeps the communicative purpose for what it was created.
Okay, very clear, Karen. And we have here another questions from Nancy Pacheco. So she says, students need to read aloud. What is the purpose of reading aloud?
Read aloud.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think it is bad to read aloud, but what is the purpose? That's the good question. What's your purpose as a teacher to make them read aloud? It's been proven that it doesn't really, as I told you at the beginning in the research, that those kind of activities are not that as effective as we wish them to be for reading comprehension. They probably help you lots for pronunciation, for word recognition, but not for comprehension. So if you want to practice pronunciation, keep doing your reading aloud activities. But if you want them to do real reading comprehension, then think of more the comprehension strategies, some of the ones I show you, and I'm sure there are more.
Yeah, so I think silence reading is better for comprehension, yeah.
Because that's how real reading is. When we
Yeah.
read, we do that.
Yes, and another question, but es un llamado de emergencia, Karen, este. I need to know, says Rosa Maria Huertas Rios, I need to know the differences between skimming and scanning, please.
Okay. Skimming will make you go back to the text or go to the text to get a general idea of it. Skimming, okay, general idea. Is it, okay, I skim the text and, okay, yeah, I get what's happening. It's a story, it's news, it's a recipe, so you skim the text. But if you scan the text, you go through the text in order to find something specific. So you go back to the text very quickly too, but you say, okay, I want to find the word, as I gave the example, love. Okay, yeah, how do you find the word love? Yes, I found one, I found two. You're not really reading the text, but you're going back to the text in order to scan the text. So that's why scan, when you put your machine and it goes through each line very quickly, that's more or less scanning. So that's the difference.
Yeah. And another question here is from Luz Adriana Jaramillo Villegas. She says, I want to know how to teach to read to little children.
Okay.
Maybe strategy.
Lots of pictures, lots of puppets. I know that from my friends who are experts on kindergarten. They do everything with storytelling, and even grown-ups like storytelling, but children enjoy it much more. So if you are teaching children, the first thing I may advise you is to start practicing in front of a mirror and work on storytelling. Even you wearing a hat for the moment of storytelling will create the environment for students to pay attention to you, or to start at least the enjoyment of reading. So storytelling is probably the best activity when working with kids. Lots of pictures. Work with the senses as well. No? Make them smell, make them shout, make them move. So there are so great storytellers that I know as teachers that they have taught me that, and it works really well.
Yeah, thank you, Karen, on behalf of English teachers in Peru. Really, thank you so much for this amazing presentation, for sharing your time, your knowledge with us. Thank you. Y en este momento, sí quiero hablar en nuestra lengua nativa, porque quisiera el castellano, ¿no? Quisiera que nos comentes un poquito, Karen, sobre una innovación, creo yo, que hay dentro del área de inglés, así como ha surgido esta comunidad y muchas otras comunidades de prácticas docentes y esta comunidad de English Teachers in Perú. Me ha parecido genial la idea de EL Talk, ¿no? Los podcasts. Me gustaría mucho que nos hables un poquito sobre esta innovación, sobre este emprendimiento, como gustes llamarlo, que es una oportunidad, creo yo, que todos los teachers presentes merecen saber que tienen para poder seguirlos y para poder aprender más, porque es un espacio de aprendizaje muy bonito que me gustaría que el día de hoy compartas con toda la audiencia.
Gracias, Mariela, por la oportunidad. Sí, EL Talk es un espacio que quisimos crear con unos amigos que también son profesores de inglés como ustedes. Todos somos profesores de inglés, que decíamos, creemos que necesitamos estar en la conversación sobre diferentes temas en educación, y más aún si los podemos hacer en inglés o están relacionados al inglés. Entonces los temas que van a encontrar, los podcasts que diseñamos para poder compartir con nuestra audiencia, usualmente están basados en, por ejemplo, lo socioemocional, que lo hicimos contigo, Mariela, fue nuestro primer capítulo, recuerdo. Ahora último, no sé si ustedes han podido, pues los invito a que lo escuchen, es sobre translenguar o translanguaging, que va más allá y que es todo un tema bastante interesante. También hemos hablado de políticas, de enseñanza del inglés, y tenemos varios temas que sabemos que a veces no se abordan porque, bueno, pues a veces creemos que solamente los expertos pueden hablar de esos temas, ¿no? Cuando los profesores de inglés tenemos mucho que decir, nuestras experiencias son relevantes y quisimos crear ese espacio para ellos. Entonces ustedes, y combinamos, ¿no? También tenemos expertos en los temas, gente que se dedica a la investigación, pero también tenemos episodios en que los profesores son los protagonistas como ustedes. Entonces los invitamos a escuchar EL Talk. Si nos escriben, inclusive ustedes mismos pueden ser invitados, ya en algún momento así ha sido, algunos de nuestros invitados han sido porque ellos nos han escrito, así que nosotros les movemos el social media a través de Spotify, YouTube y Facebook.
Excelente, sí, realmente una oportunidad justamente en este momento. Acabamos de fijar en el chat, querida Karen, el link Teachers para que se puedan unir a la página de EL Talk, para que puedan escuchar estos podcasts. Realmente tenemos espacios reducidos en donde podemos compartir este tipo de experiencias y podemos escuchar y aprender más de nosotros mismos, de experiencias de especialistas del área de inglés y de docentes del área de inglés, porque he visto muchos episodios súper interesantes. Entonces lo tienen ahí, pueden unirse. Muchísimas gracias, Karen. Una vez más te voy a pedir que por favor nos acompañes unos minutitos más para poder cerrar contigo el webinar.
Gracias, muchas gracias.
Gracias a ti. Continuamos entonces. We're going to continue with the next part, teachers. And what we have next week. Okay, now with us, Miss Jessica Carguavilca. Can you share, please, the next presentation, dear Jessica?
Yes, of course. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, my dear English teachers in Peru. Yes, we are happy because we have today Miss Meza, right? With this grateful webinar. And now next week, next Saturday, we are going to continue with these wonderful webinars with Miss Magda Castro with a topic, assessing English language learners. And how do you know your students are learning? How do you assess what your students have learned? What assessment strategies do you apply to assess your students' learning? In this webinar, we will uncover some myths about assessment. And the objective is going to be revise some assessment strategies to assess English language learners. So, dear English teachers in Peru, you can't miss it next Saturday, 24th at 6 p.m. You are welcome. Bye. Thank you. Don't miss it.
Thank you so much, dear Jessica. Now we are going to continue with the exit ticket. Teachers, please, everybody pay attention to the exit ticket. Remember that it's so important that you have to complete this form in order to register your attendance. And we have today, sorry, I have a problem here. A minute, please. There is a problem here with the exit ticket. Kurt, are you there? Hello, Kurt. Ok, si no está por ahí, lo vamos a compartir por aquí. Si no está por ahí, Kurt, un minutito. Vamos a ver. Bien, voy a dar algunas instrucciones para el exit ticket antes de que lo puedan llenar. Estoy ya por colocar el link, por favor, mil disculpas, lo estamos colocando en este momento, no sé por qué razón, y son cosas de la tecnología que se borró, pero en este momento lo vamos a ver ya. A ver, déjenme un segundito, por favor. Voy a dejar de compartir para que lo podamos visualizar. A ver, un minutito. Mientras lo compartimos. Ahora sí. Lo voy a compartir aquí. Un minuto, por favor. Recuerden lo siguiente, mientras yo voy colocando el link exacto del exit ticket, hemos tenido algunos problemitas con respecto al envío de los materiales. ¿Por qué razón, queridos teachers? Muy importante. La razón es que no han llenado correctamente los datos. Y eso es muy importante, ¿no? Es decir, cuando ustedes llenan el exit ticket, es importante que ustedes completen bien su correo electrónico, ¿sí? Si el correo electrónico tiene algún error cuando ustedes lo digitan, entonces no es posible poder compartirlo de la manera correcta, ¿no? Porque no les va a llegar el correo electrónico, así que por favor, cuando lo digiten, compartan con mucha precaución, ¿sí? Ahora sí, mil disculpas por el impasse. Muestro en pantalla el exit ticket para todos ustedes y lo vamos a compartir en este momento. Ahora sí, lo vemos en pantalla. Y nuestro exit ticket es el siguiente. Recuerden que solamente va a estar habilitado por algunos minutos. https://cutt.li/ y esto es muy importante, que respetemos las mayúsculas y las minúsculas. 2 ND en minúscula, SWSE T en mayúscula, I en minúscula, P en mayúscula, ¿sí? Por favor, recuerden eso. Recuerden que debe estar tal cual las mayúsculas y las minúsculas para que puedan ingresar. Pueden tomarle en este momento una capturita a la pantalla también, por si tienen algún problema, pero en este momento también lo deben estar fijando, lo están fijando en YouTube, en la parte posterior, está fijado ahí el link para que puedan ingresar y puedan completar. Solo hay 3 preguntitas que estoy seguro que las vamos a poder completar sin ningún problema. Bien, entonces ya estamos compartiendo en pantalla el exit ticket, por favor. Recuerden que todos sus datos quedan ahí registrados para que nosotros posteriormente podamos compartirles las referencias, recursos que podamos obtener de este webinar y de igual manera para poder considerar su asistencia y sumar las horas para su constancia de participación. Y ahora sí, finalizamos entonces este webinar con la despedida del gran equipo de English Teachers in Perú, todos los maestros que están detrás de toda la organización, de todo este ciclo de webinars, de todos los proyectos y eventos que tenemos. A cada uno de ellos el agradecimiento. Yo sé de parte de toda la comunidad, de parte de todos los teachers y de parte de ellos para ustedes, queridos colegas, también el saludo y la felicitación por ese ánimo de siempre querer seguir fortaleciendo su formación profesional. Y este es el grandioso equipo de maestros, entonces, administradores de nuestra comunidad English Teachers in Perú. Y ahora sí, llegó el momento de dejamos de compartir y encender nuestras camaritas. Querida Karen, Angelita, estamos por ahí para ponerle el final para nuestro webinar del día de hoy. Muchísimas gracias. Está por ahí mi Jessica también, Pamelita. Karen, aprovecho el momento antes de ya cerrar con esta sesión para agradecerte de todo corazón el tiempo que te has tomado. Realmente yo sé que estás full, pero yo sé que en ese corazoncito siempre está esa vocación que nos nace ser docentes y el compartir y el enseñar lo que uno tiene. Mil gracias por haber compartido el día de hoy. Hemos tenido una grandiosa audiencia, la mayoría maestros peruanos y docentes de diferentes países que están súper agradecidos con todo lo aprendido hoy día. De corazón, mil gracias. ¿Algún mensajito de despedida para la comunidad, Karen?
No, gracias a la comunidad de English Teachers en Perú por todo el esfuerzo que sé que despliegan. No es fácil hacer lo que ustedes hacen por el amor a la profesión y sobre todo a la enseñanza del inglés. Ustedes para mí son un grupo de profesionales admirables y en realidad yo encantada de participar cuando ustedes deseen. Seguimos coordinando. Esta primera vez ha sido la primera vez, así que seguro que va a haber otras. Y más bien yo creo que aprendo más de los profesores cuando hago esto, porque yo recurro a profesores. Si bien reviso literatura sobre el tema, yo tengo que ir a buscar a profesores para ver qué piensan antes de hacer lo que hago. Entonces sí, me encanta porque aprendo más. Gracias.
Eso sí, enseñamos y aprendemos a la vez. Siempre pasa en la vida del maestro a diario. Gracias, querida Karen. Tenemos aquí con nosotros a nuestra querida Angelita Salazar, que está por ahí. Angelita linda, administradora de la comunidad. Jessica Carguavilca, administradora de nuestra comunidad, que el día de hoy nos ha presentado el webinar de la próxima semana, no se lo pierdan. Magda Castro está con nosotros con un interesante tema. Y Pamela Salazar, nuestra querida Pamelita, que está ahí, administradora de la comunidad también, detrás de toda la transmisión. Teacher José Ortega Cerruto, mi persona, que de todo corazón les agradecemos una vez más su